Hello, Mrs. Martin here with Chapter 12, Lesson 3, Preparing Payroll Records. So in this lesson, an objective is to prepare a payroll register and prepare employee earning records. So what even is a payroll register? What does it do? Well, a payroll register summarizes the earnings, deductions, and net pay of all employees for one pay period. We talked about in Lesson 1 what pay periods are and how they can be different for each company. Because we know 3 Green does a semi-monthly payroll, we know that they will create a separate payroll register for each of those. So there's 2 a month. Most states and some local governments have an income tax system, so the methods of calculating state and local taxes are different from federal tax calculations. So it's really important for a business to understand, especially if they have, if a business has branches or locations in different states. It's just so important to understand the tax laws of every state and locality in which it operates, because it's could be different. So this is an example of a payroll register. So we're just going to go through. So you have your pay period date. Okay, so it's semi-month period, so it's twice a month, so up to December 15th, and the date of payment is December 15th. So we have 6 employees. And you see here there we start with their earnings. Or let's just start with employees' names. We're going to put their marital status. So M is married, S is single, number of allowances. So where do we look to find out that information? What form do we look at? Give you a moment to yell it out. W4, right? We're going to look at their withholding certificate to see what they claimed. So next we're going to go over to earnings. So we have their regular pay and then they have their overtime pay. So overtime pay is what? Anything over 8 hours a day and over 40 hours a week, and it's at time and a half of the regular wage. So we have their total earnings, and then now we're going to calculate federal income tax. And where do we look to find the federal income tax? I know you're all thinking in your head. We want to look at those withholding charts that we saw in the chapter, right? Next, we're going to do the Social Security tax. Where do we find Social Security tax? It's a percentage, right? 6.2%. Medicare tax is 1.62%. Then health insurance premiums. So full-time 3 Green employees participate in a group health insurance plan. So the premium for that is $70, and they're set by the insurance company, and they're usually based on the marital status and the number of individuals covered. So you could either get like a family plan or a single plan, etc. And then retirement plan. So in this case, Mr. Butler is having 3 Green withhold $80 per pay period for his Roth IRA. And then we're going to total up our deductions. And how do we figure out the net pay? The net pay is our total earnings minus our total deductions. So we're going to take that $1,466.25 minus the $291.17, and that's how we're going to get the $1,175.08. And then, of course, we have the check number to write the check, and that's where we put the $128 there. So we want to make sure that all of our columns match up, because all of our earnings minus all of our deductions should equal our total net pay. So we're going to total, prove, and rule. So single rule for total, double rule for that it's correct, and then our check number. Employee earnings record. So a business must send the IRS quarterly and annual reports of employee earnings and tax withholding. So maintaining those records and payroll activity for each employee is super important and useful when preparing these reports. So for an example, that record is useful for identifying when an employee individually exceeds a tax base, because remember, the government sets tax base and tax brackets on how much income tax the employee is responsible for paying. So a business form used to record details of an employee's earnings and deductions is called an employee's earnings record. So the employee's earnings and deductions for each pay period are recorded on one line of the employee earnings record. A new earnings record is prepared for each employee each quarter. So each quarter there's a new one. So I think in this next screen it's going to show John Butler's earnings record for the fourth quarter. Yep, fourth quarter. So it's October through December. So let's talk about how we prepare this. So the earnings record for the quarter ended, and that's December 31st. That would be fourth quarter. All of their employee personal information. So we're going to take that from the payroll register and put this over on the earnings record. So you can see here that that payroll register on top was the December 15th date. So on the bottom you see it's highlighted. We're just essentially bringing that information down and putting it into their quarterly record. So you can see the 1,320 regular hour earnings, $146.25 of overtime, etc. All the way across is brought. The only thing that's added then is from after net pay, there's the accumulated earnings. And that's just going to be an accumulation of all the earnings that they've had. So you need to add the accumulated earnings for the beginning of the current quarter. So this information is actually taken from the previous quarter. So the ending balance of the previous, or the ending accumulated earnings from the previous quarter is just brought forward to the new quarter. So after the first three quarters, we can see here that Mr. Butler's total earnings were $21,840. And then we're just going to continue and add on for this quarter. And I said everything already. And then again, we want to total improve our quarterly totals just to make sure that we didn't make any errors. All right, so what does the payroll register summarize? Payroll register. So it summarizes the payroll for one pay period and shows total earnings, total payroll withholdings, and net pay for all employees. So again, if we're doing a weekly payroll, we would have a different payroll register every week. If we're doing a monthly payroll, we would just have a payroll register one time for that one monthly payment. How is net pay calculated? So it's your gross wages minus, or gross wages or total earnings, you can call it different things, and then you're going to subtract out all of your deductions and withholdings, which would be your taxes, health insurance, all of that stuff. And then that's going to be your net pay. Why do companies complete employee earnings records? So we talked about these are done by quarters, and it's because the business must send quarterly and annual reports to the federal and state governments showing employee taxable earnings and that you're actually taking taxes from the employee earnings. So that's why it's important to do that for each employee for each quarter. And that's it. So with this one, you're going to do on your own, which you're actually going to be preparing a payroll register, completing the payroll register. And you're going to do a quarterly earnings report. So on your own, 12-3, and then you're going to do 12-3 application problems. So please just fill those out and upload them to the file that's indicated in Schoology. Thank you. Have a great night. Bye-bye.